G'day, legends. Welcome to another edition of the ISS News. I'm Anthony Meixner, and with me this morning is a new panelist, Kieran Toohey. He is an ex-veteran. He's currently a psycho educator. That's right. That's a good term. He's a mental health peer support worker, and his really. Well, I'll let you talk about it, mate. What ticks you, and what sort of skill sets can you bring to the table?
Well, thanks for having us on. Psycho Educator. It sounds like a crazy school teacher. It's probably a bit true, actually. What ticks, I guess, time in the military, there was always in the back of the mind wondering about human behaviour, why people did what they did, why I reacted, why I did. And so I thought, well, why don't I study it? And really became passionate about neuroscience and psychology. Went to uni, did psychology, got out of the military, and then worked in suicide prevention. And it was a sort of 50-50 role. 50% was having a yarn to people who might need support or help, and the other half of the role was psychoeducation. So training people in how to spot potential suicidal behaviours from colleagues, friends, and family, and then some data follow-up to see if the teachings we were providing were working, essentially. So while doing that, I also dabble in the philosophy of consciousness, which is, I know, going deep already. But I just find it fascinating. What is it, and how we do it? So, and also, the neuroscience part. Neuroscience is sort of a bit of a side hobby. I think neuroscience is good because it's not about Kieran or Mex. It's about a human brain. And I think the good thing about neuroscience is it can really reduce subjectivity and opinions and provide an objective analysis of not our individual experience so much, but more underlying principles that pertain to all human mammals, because we are a mammal. There's a mammalian brain, warm-blooded, and there are certain things which, done in a certain way, we can say, hey, that will happen across all human beings. And so I think that's why I like neuroscience. There's that objective lens and more tangible data and evidence for things to make claims about, if that makes sense.
Mate, absolutely. I think that's a really important part of it. You're talking about that neuroscience and sort of showing people, especially when, I go and speak to people and get some professional help and they say, well, actually, this is quite normal behavior because you are X and this is this part of the brain doing this. And you're like, makes sense. I'm not just running around, on my own adventure, that these are quite normal reactions to have. Now, using that sort of experience, and you've done a lot of work in this suicide prevention space, and there has been a lot of agencies and ESOs that have started to dabble, or even just Facebook groups that dabble in this acute mental health space. If I'm stepping the boundaries, pull me in. But at the moment, we're seeing a lot of cowboys thinking that they can talk people off ledges because they think they can help. And this has been quite a big friction point in your world. Mate, can you shed some light onto it?
Yeah, that's it's such a good point to raise. There's a lot in that. So first, before I go into what I think, I'm only going to go off what I've been educated in speaking about and what I've experienced. And before I even go into that, there's a place in New South Wales where people often go to end their lives. It's near a house, or a bunch of houses, I should say, in Sydney. And one fellow, I think he's passed away now from old age, he has gone out and seen these people who are thinking about ending their life. He's tapped them on the shoulder and gone, "Oi, come have a cup of tea, mate. I'll listen to you." That's it. So this fella had no formal education. He just had a heart and a set of ears, and he used them. So before any education, listeners might be here right now who have sat with a friend who's gone through a difficult period in their life. Fact. You've probably done a suicide intervention, but you've not known you've done it. So I think that's pretty awesome to know that it need not be too complex, but there are things we can do that can push someone further away from listening to your ideas about getting them safe. And so first things first, most people have the ability, I think everyone has the ability to do it and have probably done it. But when we get onto Facebook and groups like that, people are passionate. So I want to make this clear too, that all the people I know working in the specifically suicide prevention space in veteran communities and construction communities and mining communities have got to flag their intentions are absolutely crystal clear about doing the right thing. That they're not there to harm, which I think is amazing. Where we go wrong are real simple, subtle things. For example, a person on Facebook was highlighted to be high risk, and what a certain group did is go, "Hey, person," and they named them, is thinking about, I think the terminology they used wasn't great either, something stupid, doing something stupid. Can people follow up? So I think the first thing is you put someone's name and photo on a public forum for lots of people to see without that person's permission. 1. 2, they said it was thinking about doing something stupid, which to that person might not have been, or it might have been something silly, regardless. And then the third point is that a whole bunch of them got in cars because they lived in a certain proximity and just sort of convoyed to this person's house, arrived on this person's front door and said, "Hey, we're here to save you." Now, the intention's good. There's no doubt about it. The intention is to stop someone from dying. Like, what a great intention. But the person got really angry. And part of the anger was, no one asked me if this is okay. Everyone's come to me saying what I need, and no one's asked me what I need. They just assumed what it is I need.
Telling him what he needs and not asking him what he wants.
Well, yeah. I mean, and by the way, I used to do that too. I don't want to sit here all holier than thou, because I'm not. I'm an absolute ratbag. It's only because I learnt this myself that I want to pass these things on. And we often think that the person, or we can think that the person with these thoughts lacks agency, when in fact they're the number one part in the recovery and healing and safety. And so we've got to keep them included. What we can help do, if we're maybe not under the influence of alcohol or have a weapon or thinking of suicide, is we can help mediate. So, for example, someone we end up talking to might be quite young, and they say, I'll feel safe if I talk to this person. Often we go to a default. It's like, no, let's get your mum, let's get your dad, because usually we think that's what works for me. But it could be the mum or dad that's causing the problems. And then we get someone to interfere in something that could make it worse. So does that make sense, Mex? Like, that connection, by my assumptions, can actually be harmful to that individual.
Yeah, so I suppose putting your thoughts and feelings as to how you think a situation should be resolved might not necessarily marry up with where they are and who they trust and feel. Yes, cool. I'm happy that came through clear, because if I break my leg and I've got a compound fracture, there's no real discussion about what you need. It's pretty clear. Someone who's done basic first aid will have a donut bandage around the fracture,
and then elevate, and but they'll keep you included if you're conscious. And if you're unconscious, it's like that you've got no say. You get taken away in an ambulance. But the bandage for the compound fracture equivalent in a mental health intervention is really listening and then going, what do you need? And then facilitating their responses. So if their needs that they ask of you maybe can't be achieved, like secrecy right now, don't tell anyone, I've got to keep it a secret. Well, then how do we facilitate those needs? So there are little tips like that that I picked up over the years, which essentially saved lives and then opened the conversation for people getting more help instead of closing off.
So, yeah, and I suppose that's the tricky one is when they start, it's having tools in the toolbox, right? Because, I mean, we've all probably been in a position where we've either been there to listen to people and then probably overstep the boundaries that a little bit too much. But it's having the tools in the toolbox at that point. I wouldn't know how to respond to them asking for it to be secret because I know you shouldn't, but then I know that's what they want, right? So then I'm going to start stammering and stuttering, and I think they'll lose a confidence in that. Would you not think?
Yeah, it definitely helps to look. They say try to act or appear calm, and that really helps the person who isn't calm. There's nothing worse when you come to a friend troubled, and then they start crying when you tell them what's going on. It's like, what are you doing? I need you, bro. That's why I came to you. Now you're breaking down. I mean, it shows that they're a nice person, obviously, but in this situation, at least try to appear to remain calm. And to steal a colleague's words, you've probably heard before, the whole duck on the pond. You see the duck floating, and underneath the little legs are going, oh, shit. So appearing calm helps, but being honest. So going, this rattles me a lot, because they can sense it. But then also facilitating what they need. I can't even remember your question. What was it around specifically? So the first one is appear calm, but stuttering and stumbling. You were saying.
Yeah, and then when it comes to some asks the whole maintaining secrecy is something that you can't do, but you have. Yeah. I don't know how to respond to that, and having those tools would leave me probably stammering and lack of confidence that they would probably see through. Hey.
Yeah, because then you are at risk of ruining that rapport you've started with. So someone, it seems as though it's usually younger people. When I had this occur, that they might say, if I tell you something, you've got to keep it a secret. My response was, well, it depends what you tell me. And they'd go, well, and then divulge whatever they were needing to say. And part of it was, it depends what you're going to tell me. If it's going to hurt or kill someone else, or hurt or kill yourself, I have to get someone more qualified than me to help us. And then there's a conversation around confidentiality. It could be, look, the secret or confidentiality, we could call it, can stay between us three or a carer. So it's not that they don't want you to tell the world and post on Facebook, but, and this goes back to the literature, the person's crying out for some help. And some people might say, well, they're just looking for attention. And the response to that is, just give them some attention. Like, just do that. No skin off your nose. Give them some attention. And so the other part of that is and this is going to sound kind of a bit oxymoronic perhaps, they want you to ask them. They want you to ask, and therefore they want a response. Now, Living Works, which is a model I use to teach assist and safe talk, it's a world's best practice, research based in Canada, found that people call them red flags or behaviours that could be about suicide. The researchers found it, they called them invitations. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? Why do they call them invites? And so you or any listeners think about putting out an invitation to your birthday party, I don't know, on Facebook. And you get, yes, I'm coming. And you're like, beauty. No, I'm not coming. You're like, oh, that's pretty crap. And then the worst one, oh, well, there's sometimes you get maybe. And that's a bit annoying, a bit more annoying on the annoying spectrum. And then the worst one is no response to your invitation at all. And so that's just your birthday. You imagine you're sitting there and thinking about ending your life and you're sending out red flags, invitations, and no one answers it. It can feel really, really bad. Really bad. And there's a lot of evidence to back this too, and even my own experience of this situation. Well, I just wished, I just wish someone will ask me about this, but no one did. And part of it is we don't have that education. We don't have these tools in our toolbox. And I think part of my mission is to hopefully get this out to people so that they know it's okay to answer an invitation. But there are ways to do it which can be more helpful than perhaps harmful. Now, before I go any further, simply asking someone about suicide won't make them suicide. Put that out of your mind. In fact, when you ask someone about suicide, I call it the equivalent of the raising the leg and putting a donut bandage around that stress, that compound fracture. It's the people report a reduced anxiety. They say, oh, it feels like a weight's been lifted from my shoulders because someone finally seen me, acknowledged my invitation, and asked me. So I've been fortunate enough, I know that might sound ironic, fortunate, but I've been fortunate enough to ask many face-to-face and hundreds on the phone if they were thinking of ending their lives, and I've had only one adverse reaction to. Because a lot of men in very alpha roles, and there's some big fellas out there, some scary-looking blokes, think, well, I better not ask him because he'll tell me to get stuffed or he'll swing, a fist at me. Never had it happen. Now, maybe because it's my baby face and I'm trying to look mature with a beard, maybe it's that and they see through it. But I had one guy say, get effed one day. It was in Newcastle, of course. G'day, Newcastle. And it was because he went out to his car. I had to watch him to make sure he didn't, drive off and continue to act on his thoughts. He gets out of his car. He does man walk back to me with his arms out. He's about 6'4". He's a unit. And in my head, I'm like, okay, mate.
Oh, fuck.
I'm like, where can I run? And it's like, you can't fight, Kieran. You got to run, man. And as he got closer, I thought, no, I'm going to stand here. And he put his hand out and he said, sorry, mate. You really caught me off guard. And today was the 1-year anniversary of my sister's suicide. It's just a coincidence. But here I am now doing this to 150, 200 men, asking them about suicide, and only one adverse reaction. Every other single reaction has been like, this guy's genuine, I'll talk. So I think to alleviate fears, particularly for hypermasculine groups and communities, that it's okay if you're caring. And if you're wrong, if they go, no, I'm not suicidal, dickhead, okay, I made a mistake. I'd rather know for sure than say nothing, because people go, well, look, this happened to a person from military. A couple of blokes went to a funeral of a suicide, and they said there were no signs. He didn't do anything. And then someone said, I got a text message at midnight, and the message read, love you, brother, all the best. It's like, well, I haven't heard from him in 4 months. Why is he saying that's weird? The gut feeling was like, that's weird. One bloke found out at the funeral that another bloke got it, and another bloke overheard them, and he also got it, 3 of them. These 3 blokes got together at the wake and said, go round and ask the other fellas if they got this text message. Turns out that this text message went out to about 45 people. and they all suspected it was a bit strange for this person. Now, that we could call a red flag. And then they said, well, there was no other signs. I was like, okay, well, did you know about his divorce? Yes. He was sleeping on Pat's couch? Yep. He wasn't going to footy training? Yep. He was drinking more at the pub? Yep. He also slept in his ute. So it's not clear, but perhaps those things were invitations for us to reach out and go, hey, brother, are you thinking about suicide? And I think that communities like on Facebook could just take a few careful, considered steps to make sure they are consenting to the support, but also at times when to escalate if the person doesn't or seems as though they don't want support, you've got to get someone more qualified than yourself to help intervene, if that makes sense, Max.
Yeah, so when we talk about them consenting, obviously if they are sort of reaching out, then actually contact them and talk to them. And if you get a hold of them, and they're saying, yes, no, I am going to kill myself, that's when you sort of hit the ambulance and get the boys. Is that where we're going? But up to that, you need to get their consent and talk to them and see what's going on.
Yeah, it helps if you get their consent, because then you'll feel comfortable if you're doing the intervention. Oh, phew, okay, well, but I think to say, I need extra help, or we need extra help because I'm not qualified enough to do this. So we need extra help is inclusive, and I know that inclusive words, man, I used to rattle my head. I'm like, what's all this BS inclusive words and safe spaces? But I'm like, kind of makes sense though now when I've experienced we. I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool. And it's a very military thing. It's a very mining thing. It's a very construction thing. We need extra help. So saying it like that, and then them going, no, I don't want extra help. Well, what do you do then? I think the best advice is to go, okay, well, let's keep talking about what's happening for you. And I know everyone probably knows this, that silence, let them have a bit of silence. If you can meet. But the other thing is too, a lot of people 000 straight away as a default. Now, one fellow I know who loves rifles. Rifles and shooting is his mindfulness. And when a person found out he was thinking of suicide, they called the cops. The cops came around, threw him to the ground, arrested him, took his rifles. Long story short, he spoke to me a while after when they let him out of the cell, so on and so forth, and he said, they took my mindfulness from me. I wasn't going to use it on myself or anyone, but that's what I use to relax and meditate, so to speak. So in that particular case, the 000 actually didn't help. And he had other issues going on, like claims about family violence against him. So the police come, or did in this, they don't always, in this particular situation, came with a preconceived idea that this fellow might be of a certain character. So it's tricky, but I think there are things we can put in place that stop us going down those avenues that can make it worse as well. And that, again, is try to keep them involved. Now, if they're under the influence, well, their logic and rationale is probably being chopped off, disinhibited by the alcohol, for example, or other drugs. So it might be a case of keeping them talking and just validating whatever concerns they're having, right or wrong, while you do, as you said, Mex, rightfully, 000 get going that in the background.
Mate, I think this is going to be really important. As you're aware, Swiss 8 is launching their barbecue to remember stuff, and where it is a mental health campaign through October to November. Part of the barbecue is not a acute mental health thing. It's about connection and proactivity and just meeting up with your mates and remembering November 11. But I think that we've spoke about this, getting some of those hosts or anyone in the community that is a leader that has those groups that might reach out because you might face someone, whether it's in the veteran community or not, when you attend one of these events, this might be the opening that they need, right? So getting training, I think, would be fantastic and alleviate so much stress. Being on the other side of the phones and trying to talk people down and not having the tools, it is one of the most stressful things I've had to do. Where can people go in the veteran community and in the civilian space, go and get the tools and do the courses, even the basic ones, that would alleviate some of the stress for the guy assisting?
Yeah, good question. And I agree, like Remembrance Day, like that connection, so important. I'm doing a bit of a segue. I'm doing a non-violent communication course at the moment as professional development, which it's a foreign language for me, man, non-violent. and it's a bit like namaste and all this. And I'm like, no, I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to be open, take what I think's good. And we worked on what we thought we needed at the moment. And one of the words that came up for me was connection. I'm like, man, I just miss my buddies. I love Zoom and Teams, but nowhere near as good. And they said, what do you miss? I said, okay, this is going to sound massively bogan, but that's because I am. I just want a bowl of chips and gravy and a schooner out of a tap and watch some footy at the pub with my mate. That's it. And so for blokes, that connection can be just shoulder to shoulder, not face to face, leaning on a bar, having a schooner and watching footy and talking smack. And I'm not condoning getting hammered and all that, all right? I'm just saying I love sharing a beer with a mate, and that's what I miss, connection. When we start to, because I'm in New South Wales, when the places can start opening up again and places that are open, for veterans, open arms. I work there as well, and I teach assist, 2-day suicide prevention. I've taught groups in the Army, full-time serving members are doing it. I've taught ESOs, and I've taught individuals the 2-day assist training. And the good news is that I come as a lived experience veteran, so I can talk the lingo. I know what it's like, and I've also got, luckily, the education to go with it. For the community, generally speaking, mining and construction, you've got an organisation like the charity Mates in Construction, Mates in Mining. It's free. They're subsidised by the government for free. If you're not in mining or construction, it doesn't matter either. Get in contact with Lifeline, and Lifeline also do training. A little point or a story on the power of this training. 2 days is applied suicide intervention skills training. Half-day course is Safe Talk, and you get an acronym like Doctor's ABCD, but for suicide: talk, ask, tell, ask, listen, keep safe, talk. Very simple. We went to the mining industry 6, 12, and 18 months post-training. Now remember, here's a bunch of fellas mainly, there were ladies, but it's a small percentage, who were there for mining. That's what they were passionate about. Not psychoeducation, not psychology or neuroscience. We said, hey, you did this training 6, 12, 18 months ago. Did you ask anyone about suicide? And I think it was about 200 odd people. I can't remember precisely the number of participants, 200 and something. 93% said, yes, I did use this training 6, 12, 18 months post getting the course. The next question was, okay, if you answered yes, did the person say, yes, I am thinking about suicide? 70-something percent, a low 70s, maybe 75, said the person said yes, they were thinking about suicide. I was like, so, wow, that's pretty incredible. Next question. Out of those who said the person was thinking about suicide, how imminent was it? And then that went down lower then, and it was something like 47% though. So nearly half of these. So that would have been down to, so 90% out of 200 and something. There's 100 and something people potentially saved 100 and something lives 6, 12, and 18 months post this very simply. What I loved about this, Mex, is there's some big burly bloke called Jeff, and he's been working in the mines for 30 years with his mate Bob, and he is able to do a suicide intervention. He still spoke the way Jeff speaks. He still loved 4X, motocross, and rugby league. Nothing changes about you. And that's the beautiful thing about this. We're not here to change who you are. It's just giving tools to be more of who you are. And I know I sound effing cheesy right now, but I really love the way that my mates talk to me. Keep taking the piss out of your mates. Keep being you. But just have these tools in your tool belt, so when you see him sleeping on the couch, going through a divorce, not rocking up to footy training, you know to go, hey, Baz, you wanker, come have a yarn. However you talk. And then we found that, at least 50% were of those people who said yes were pretty high importance, critical. So, what a wonderful story to report, that without any psycho education or university, some haven't even finished high school, they did that. I was so proud of that community that was able to do it. And I think the veteran community and other communities, white collar, blue, whatever, can do this.
They absolutely can. If they're and look, if they're watching or listening to this, there's a fair chance that you either are or will be in a position at some point in your life where you're going to have a conversation very much like this. And these tools, I think, are going to, like I said before, really reduce the stress. And if it sounds like you just they give you the tools and you still talk how you are, and it's a 2-day course and it's free, there's not a whole lot. It should remove the virtue signaling white knights and just get in there, get it done. It's a 2-day course and it's free. Mate, what a wonderful concept.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Thanks. It's not even me. It's just put on by the government and the communities that are passionate about it. And the other beautiful thing is, what nicer thing to meet someone as another human and go, hey, dude, or gal, whoever, we can all go through these things, and I'm not here to try and tell you what to do. I'm here to listen and provide support if you need it. Be careful about trying to fix their problems. It's not our role. Bob and Baz down in the pit, don't become psychologists, Bob. Just be Bob. Let the psychologist do psychology. You be Bob. Family members, don't become a psychologist, psychiatrist, or GP. Just be a family member. Like, people can often go into, I better be, clinical here, or this is what the medical fraternity says. Just be you, and show that your own vulnerability. So it's important, and I think we go wrong with language again. And this is what I think is happening. I don't want to go down too much of a rabbit hole, but I'll just make a point which I think is happening with COVID and vaccinations. It's the same thing. It's not so much that you're unintelligent and don't know that a virus does certain things. I think it's the tone of messaging. So, for example, if you're going to have another schooner at the pub and your partner walks in and goes, well, you're not going to have another one, are you? You're like, actually, pour me 4 more, mate. And more schooners probably aren't good. It's the fact it was said that way that makes you go, I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm my own man who pays taxes and works hard and raises children. A little respect. And I feel like that sort of messaging with suicide can come across in that way too, where we know, look, you're not going to do something silly. It's like, you know what? I don't want to keep talking to you right now because that feels too judgy. So your intention's good, but the outcome might not be. So I think just some clarity in things like that. The tone of messaging matters. Try to avoid fixing and advice giving, ironically.
Well, from an educated place, mate, and I think the context and the intentions are right. Mate, I think it's really good getting you on, and if you're willing to keep coming back on to break down some of these complex issues from a educated perspective, but putting it in the terminology of knuckle draggers like myself and other sort of lay people. I'd really appreciate it, mate. And I really got a lot out of this. We'd love to have you back on if you ever get the time, or if there's a topic that is a little lighter and not so heavy, and you're just interested, we'll get you on as that psycho education piece, mate.
Yeah, Max, thanks for having me. I'd love to. Anything about the brain and how it changes, conditioning in the military, you know, what happens to us. That's always fascinating to find out that you weren't aware of what happened to you. So that's a really fascinating conversation I'd love to have. And before I go, I thought I'd say keep telling your friends to put their hand up when they're struggling. But the data suggests they probably won't put their hand up and go, hello, I'm struggling. And we know that from experience. So let's reverse the narrative and go to them instead of waiting for them to come to us. Because what they do is they go, well, Mex will call him. He's a closer friend than I am. So, and then Mex goes, Kieran will call him because he's close. We keep doing this and then we miss them. So this happened recently, given the IGADF with someone, and they got missed but eventually found. So go to them. If you get a gut feeling, you approach them. It takes a bit of bravery, a bit of courage, but hey, if you're a soldier, a warrior, and that's who you stand by and who you say you are, step up.
That's good. That is true. Yeah, it's everyone wants to be a veteran until it's time to do veterans. Right? And that,
yeah, thank you, mate. I appreciate your time. Sorry, mate, go on.
No, that's fine. Mate, we'll get you on. How about we'll get you on next week and talk about some conditioning and what you don't know they're doing to your brain.
Yeah. When I found out about they're doing roadworks in the house next door. When I found out about this sort of implicit bias that we come through and very unconscious behaviours, it blew my mind. It helped my mental health recovery too. To be fair, so yeah. Stay tuned, man. Got a good one for you.
Cheers, mate. Good on you. I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, bro.
That's great, mate.